Welcome to the Leapfrog BI sample project video series. My name is Paul Felix, and in this video we're going to be creating a PSA component. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what the purpose of a PSA component is. PSA stands for Persistent Staging Area, and its role is to buffer the source system in the event that a large portion of a data mart needs to be loaded or reloaded. If in the absence of a PSA or a consolidated historical source, we would need to go back to the source system and recollect all the data to reload the mart. With the PSA in place, we simply would need to requery the PSA, which is an area that typically the data mart developer controls. There's other benefits to PSA, such as the source systems don't always track history. For example, you might have a customer table or set of tables in your ERP system that may or may not track changes to that customer's attributes, like what city they live in or what their phone number is or so on. Which, when you have a PSA, as long as you're tracking changes on those attributes, which in most cases will track changes on all attributes, then we have the ability to recreate history or relate facts to those different versions of the attributes throughout history. In some cases, the source may not even be persistent. So we may have a source that only maintains data for a certain period of time, and then it might be archived or it might be just discarded. With the PSA, we are able to differentiate the rules that we use for which data is going to be maintained in the data mart as compared to the source system. So that's a few reasons for having a PSA. Let's jump right in here and build one. So I'm already logged in, and I'm going to move over to the project area just to take a quick look at which project I have set as my current project. If this was not my current project, I would just select detail and then say set current, but in this case I only have one project, and I can see that the sample project is the InFocus project. So moving over to the component area, just a quick recap. In earlier videos we have already profiled our source system. We've used that profile to create a connection. We've also created a stage component. So in the connections area, we have a source and a stage connection. The source connection is one that we created automatically whenever we imported our product profile. And our stage is pointing us to a database where we're actually going to be putting our stage components, which are the volatile stage and the persistent stage components. If we look at either of these connections, we can see that they do track their different connection values based on the life cycle that we have listed here. And this project has 3 life cycles, so we have 3 different versions of the connections. Moving over to the stage component, we've already created a product stage component. You can see that this is using our source connection to source the data, and we're going to be placing the results or the table that we create in our AWR stage database. We look at the details of that stage component. We can see that we have several fields, quite a few fields here that we've imported, and we also have a parameter that's part of this stage component. We've already placed a statistic in that parameter's value, so we're all set here. We can now use this component downstream, which is what we're about to do. So I'm going to go over to my PSA component type. Don't have any PSA components built yet. I'm going to just click Create New, and I'm going to select the only template that's available at this time, which is a PSA main template. And I'm going to give this a name. We're going to be creating a PSA on that product stage table. So I'm just going to call this product and give it a description of product PSA. For my details, I only need to define 2 things. First thing I needed to select is which stage component am I going to use as the source for this PSA. And I'm going to, of course, use the stage product. Which connection do I want to use for creating the object that this PSA component ultimately creates? And that's going to be, once again, I'm going to use the stage database connection, AdventureWorks Replay Stage. So I'm all set. I just click Save. The component is now created. If I need to edit it, I can always click Edit, update my component, and I'm all set with those changes. Now that we have a couple of components here, a stage and a PSA, we can start taking a look at the component usage map. This is a very simple view of the upstream and downstream components as they relate to one another. So for example, here I'm focused on my PSA product component. I can quickly go to the header, which is where I am now, or I can go to the detail. We'll go there in just a second. But I can also see that upstream, this component is dependent on my stage product component. And if I needed to quickly jump to the details of that, I could click on Detail, and now I'm looking at my stage product detail. I can go back to the header of my stage product, and now I can see that downstream for my stage product I have a dependency on the PSA product, which is what we just created. So I can look at the header of PSA product. You can see how I can easily navigate around my lineage in this way. We'll take a look at this more in later videos, but for now let's just go straight to the PSA product component detail. Each of these components and component templates have a relevant set of inputs based on the component type and the template selected. In the case of a PSA, we have what we've already looked at in the stage component, which is a field list. All components will have a field list. But in this case, I can now create new fields if I want to, and I can also delete fields or modify fields. I'm going to start here at the top at the PSA definition, and we're going to look at some of these inputs here as we step through this component. In the PSA definition, we have a couple of important selections. The first is the record date time. Leapfrog BI is going to keep track of a record date time value throughout every component's use from PSA all the way to any destination. So it could be from a PSA to a transformation, or a PSA to a dimension, or a PSA to a fact. Anything from the PSA forward, Leapfrog BI is going to keep track of that record date time. So we have to tell Leapfrog BI exactly what is my record date time. Now I could do several things here. I could create an expression that would just say simply that I want to take the current date and subtract 1 from it to say that all of my records have a record date time of the day prior to them being loaded. Or I could select a field that exists in the table, which is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to click Modify PSA. In this case, I'm just going to say that my record date time is equal to my modified date. That's all I'm going to do here. Another important selection here is the change tracking. Whenever, as we've already discussed, the purpose of PSA is to keep track of history. It's a historical record of all different values for every attribute that we have here. So why would we ever want to not track changes on some of these different values or fields? Well, a good example would be this field here, a row GUID. I don't really want to track changes to a row GUID because it's always going to be unique. It's the purpose of that field. So in that case, I would just move it over to Do Not Track Changes, and I'm good to go. Now I will not track changes on that field. So I'm done now defining my PSA. That's everything I need to do there. I'm going to quickly take a couple more minutes here to talk about some of the other possible selections I could make. And I'm going to jump over, I'm going to skip across filter definition. I'm going to jump into the expression builder. I'm going to spend a little bit of time now talking about the expression builder, and we can look at it more in later later videos as well. To build an expression, I just need to click New Expression. It's going to bring me into an expression builder that's completely GUI driven. So I just need to make the appropriate selections, and Leapfrog BI will take care of all the syntax. It'll ensure that I'm using the correct data types for the different arguments of all the functions I have available. All of the available operations are listed here on the left side of the template, the expression template selector. I can either go to Show All, and that would give me, of course, a list of all the available expressions that I can choose from, or I can narrow that search down and maybe go into function date time area, and that would limit me to only see the date time type expressions or functions. Let's do a couple of simple ones here. Let's do a get date, and I'm going to give this expression a name. I'm going to say run date, and that's it. In this case, I don't have any arguments to fill out. I could get a little information about the expression or the function I'm using here. It says get date returns a date time 2 with a precision of 7 value that contains the date and time of the computer which the instance is running. So it gives me a little information about the function that I'm actually using, and that can be quite helpful if you're not familiar with every one of the functions that you have available. So I'm going to save this, and as soon as I do that, I'm now back into my detail view. I can see that I do have a function or an expression here called run date. This is the one I just created, and it simply is using get date. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to create another expression, and this time I'm going to do, let's do a date again. I'm not convert. Let's do date, and this time let's do date add. And date add is well, let's just read it. It says it returns a new date time value by adding an interval to the specified date part of a specified date. So what I want to do is I want to get, I don't know, let's do 1 month ago. So in the lower area here, I have a function, date add, that my source system has made available to me because I'm using SQL Server. I have date add, which is a T-SQL function, and the arguments are here in each of the controls. So the first argument is part of the date to be incremented or decremented. So I just simply select the date part. I'm going to select month. And then the next argument, it says number of units to be added to the specified date part. So I could, if I wanted to, select one of these fields to add or remove months from my date. Instead, I'm just going to type in here a -3, or sorry, a -1, because I want to get 1 month ago. And then on my third area here, our input, I want to actually put in the date that I'm using as my reference date, and that's going to be an expression that we just created, and we called it run date. So now we have a 1 month ago value, whatever you want to put in there for the description. I save that, and now I have another expression, but I actually have two. Whenever I put in the -1, what Leapfrog BI did was it went in there and it actually converted that -1 to a constant, which is, or a cast statement, which is listed here as -1 expressions. So you can see in this way how I could build any type of expression that I wanted to build by just using one as a building block for the other. In later videos, we're going to look a little more at how you can use expressions as filters. You can also use expressions to create new fields, and quite a few other things. The expression builder is really central to Leapfrog BI. So we'll see you in the next video, which will be the transformation component.